The royal palace was buzzing with excitement. It was a day of celebration, a grand event where Princess Lyra was to be formally introduced to her betrothed. Prince Varek, the guests, coming from different parts of the galaxy, had gathered in the grand hall, eager to witness the joining of two powerful families. Lyra was the jewel of the kingdom, known for her beauty, intelligence, and strength. She was supposed to marry a prince from a noble family, someone who could help strengthen her position. The royal council had carefully chosen him, and everyone expected a match that would bring peace and power to the kingdom. But Lyra had a secret she had kept for years. She had already married someone who was not a prince, someone who was not even from their galaxy. His name was Ethan, a human. Lyra and Ethan had met years ago during a rescue mission. She'd been captured by a group of intergalactic rebels who wanted to overthrow the government of her homeworld. Ethan, a soldier from Earth, had been part of a team sent to rescue her. At first, Lyra had seen him as just another soldier, one of many sent to help her. But as the mission went on, she began to notice something different about him. Unlike the other soldiers, who were skilled but often reckless, Ethan was calm, calculated, and fearless. He saved her life more than once. Over time, their connection deepened, and what started as gratitude turned into something stronger. Despite the danger of their situation, they had found love in each other. After the mission was over, they secretly married. It was a bond that neither expected, but both cherished. They had kept their marriage a secret, knowing that the royal family would never accept it. Humans were seen as weak, unimportant compared to the powerful alien species in the galaxy. And yet, in Ethan, Lyra had found someone who was more than just a soldier. He was her equal. As the royal event went on, Lyra couldn't help but feel nervous. Today, her secret would be revealed. The queen, her mother, had no idea about Ethan. The entire royal court would be shocked. As Lyra walked into the grand hall, her heart pounded in her chest. She had already made peace with her decision to marry Ethan, but she knew that her mother would not approve. Her mother, the queen, had always planned for her to marry a prince, someone who could strengthen the kingdom's power. Ethan did not fit that image. Lyra stood at the entrance of the hall, looking down at the crowd of guests. She had to tell them, she had to tell her mother. But how? She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Ethan was already in the hall, standing near the back, waiting for her. The queen, dressed in her royal robes, walked up to Lyra. "My daughter," she said with a smile, "you look radiant today. The guests are eager to meet your future husband. Is he ready?" Lyra's smile faltered for a moment. "Actually, Mother, there's something I need to tell you." The queen raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Lyra?" Lyra's voice was steady, but her heart was racing. "I have already married. His name is Ethan. He is human." The words hung in the air, and the room seemed to fall silent. The queen's expression went from one of confusion to disbelief. "What?" she whispered. "You married a human. Why would you do such a thing?" Lyra felt the weight of her mother's words, but she stood her ground. "Because I love him." The room buzzed with whispers, and Lyra could feel the eyes of the guests on her. They had all heard of humans, but none of them had ever met one. Humans were a small, insignificant species compared to the powerful alien races that dominated the galaxy. To marry a human was considered a disgrace, a sign of weakness. The queen took a step back, her face flushed with anger. "You cannot be serious. How could you marry someone so ordinary? He is not a prince. He does not come from a noble family. He is a soldier, nothing more." Lyra's heart ached, but she did not flinch. "He is more than that, Mother. He saved my life when no one else could. He is strong, brave, and kind. And he is my husband, whether you accept it or not." The queen's eyes narrowed. "I will not allow this. I will not have a human as part of our royal family." Lyra felt her stomach twist in knots. She had known this would happen. She had known that her mother would never accept Ethan, but she couldn't take back what she had done. She loved Ethan, and nothing would change that. The guests in the hall were still murmuring, unsure of how to react. Some looked shocked, others amused. The royal family had always been known for their power, their strength. To have a human among them seemed impossible, almost laughable. Just then, Ethan stepped forward from the back of the hall. He walked toward Lyra, his eyes locked on hers. He had the same calm expression she remembered from their time together on the mission. He was not afraid. He was not intimidated by the royal court or the queen's harsh words. He stood tall, his presence commanding attention. The queen's eyes widened as Ethan approached. She had heard about humans, of course, but seeing one in person was different. He was not what she had expected. He was not small or weak. He was taller than most of the royal guards, his posture confident. His eyes, though, were what caught the queen's attention. They were filled with kindness, but there was something else in them, something that told her this human was not like the others. "Your Majesty," Ethan said, bowing respectfully, but his voice was firm. "I know that my presence here is unexpected, but I assure you, I would never dishonor your family or your kingdom. I love your daughter, and I will protect her with my life. I ask for your understanding, not for acceptance, but for respect." The queen stared at him for a long moment. Silence in the room grew thick, and for a second, Lyra thought her mother might explode in anger. But then, to her surprise, the queen spoke again, her voice low and measured. "Very well," the queen said, her eyes narrowing. "You may stay for now. But know this, you have a long way to go before you prove yourself worthy of being a part of this family." Lyra sighed with relief. She knew it wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a step forward. She took Ethan's hand, grateful that he had stood by her through everything. He had not only fought for her life, but had also fought for their love. Okay, now, together, they would face whatever came next. This part sets up the conflict with Lyra's secret marriage to a human, showcasing the tension between royal expectations and true love. The rest of the story will continue to develop the conflict as they face challenges from the royal family and the galaxy itself. Ask ChatGPT. The grand hall was filled with a tense silence. Lyra stood with Ethan by her side, facing her mother, the queen. The royal guests continued to murmur in disbelief, whispering to each other about the shocking revelation. The queen's words had cut through the room like a sharp blade. Lyra could feel the weight of her mother's anger. "I understand this is unexpected, but I won't back down," Lyra said, her voice calm, though her heart was pounding. She turned to Ethan and gave him a small, reassuring smile. He stood silently, his expression steady, though Lyra could tell he was feeling the pressure. The queen took a deep breath, her face still hard with disbelief. "You love him?" she asked, her voice low and cold. "You love this human?" Lyra nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I do. I would do anything for him." The queen's eyes narrowed. "I cannot believe this. How can you possibly marry someone who is not even from our world?" "You are a princess, Lyra. You are meant to marry someone of great power, someone who can help secure the future of our kingdom. But instead, you chose a human." Ethan stepped forward, breaking the silence. His voice was firm but respectful. "Your Majesty, I do not come from a place of power, but I am not without value. I have proven my worth in ways you may not understand. When your daughter was in danger, I did not hesitate. I risked my life to save hers. That is all I ask you to see. I love her, and I would never harm her." The queen raised an eyebrow. "You risked your life? What could a human possibly offer us that we do not already have? Our warriors are some of the finest in the galaxy. What can a soldier from Earth do that they cannot?" Ethan stood tall, looking directly at the queen. "I'm not just a soldier. I've trained for years to survive in ways that many others can't. I've been through battles you can't even imagine. While humans may not have the same strength as the great warriors of your world, we have something else, something that makes us stand apart. We have determination, resourcefulness, and an ability to adapt. We may not be powerful in the traditional sense, but we are dangerous when pushed." The queen stared at Ethan for a moment, her cold expression unreadable. Gosh, she had never met a human before, and everything she had heard about them painted a picture of a weak and insignificant species. But here in front of her stood a man who spoke with such confidence, such certainty. It was a strange feeling, one she was not used to. Enough, the queen finally said, turning to Lyra. You want him to stay? Fine, but he will prove himself. If he truly belongs here, he will have to show it. We will not simply allow a human to walk into our court and pretend he is worthy of standing beside you. Lyra's heart sank. She knew what her mother meant. The queen would never accept Ethan unless he passed some kind of test. But Lyra also knew that Ethan had never been afraid of challenges. In fact, he thrived on them. Fine, Lyra said, her voice steady. What do you want him to do? The queen's gaze was cold. The trials, she said. We will see if this human is truly worthy of your time, princess. The trials were a series of tests designed to prove the strength, skill, and intelligence of any potential suitor. They were not for the faint of heart. Only those who were truly strong both physically and mentally had ever passed them. It was the final test before someone could officially join the royal family, and no one had ever questioned their importance. Lyra exchanged a look with Ethan. She could see the determination in his eyes, but she also saw a flicker of doubt. He had never faced anything like this before. The royal trials were legendary, and few ever survived them, let alone passed. I'll do it, Ethan said, his voice firm. I'll prove myself. Not for your mother, but for you. Lyra smiled softly, pride swelling in her chest. She knew Ethan would do whatever it took to prove his worth, but a part of her still worried. The trials were dangerous, and the odds were stacked against him. The royal guards were some of the finest warriors in the galaxy, and they would be watching his every move. The queen gestured toward the doors at the far end of the hall. The first trial will be held in the royal training grounds. You will face our best warriors in combat. We'll have no weapons and no help. It will be a test of your strength, agility, and strategy. Only those who survive are allowed to proceed to the next stage. Lyra looked at Ethan, a mix of fear and hope in her eyes. Are you sure you want to do this? Ethan nodded, his expression determined. I have to. For us. Without another word, they followed the queen to the training grounds. As they entered, Lyra couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This was no ordinary test. This was a battle for Ethan's future, and for their love. The royal guards were already assembled, their expressions hard and focused. Lyra recognized some of them. They were the best fighters in the kingdom, trained from childhood to be warriors. They were swift, strong, and ruthless. Ethan stood in the center of the training ground, his hands at his sides, waiting for the challenge. The first guard stepped forward. He was tall and muscular, his face covered by a helmet. Without warning, he charged at Ethan, his powerful fists swinging. Ethan dodged the first blow easily, his reflexes sharp. The guard tried again, but this time, Ethan grabbed his arm and used the guard's own momentum to throw him to the ground. The crowd gasped in surprise. Ethan wasn't just surviving, he was outsmarting them. The second guard stepped forward. But Ethan was already moving, quickly took down the second and third guards in a flurry of quick, calculated moves. The royal court watched in stunned silence as Ethan made his way through the warriors, his speed and intelligence outshining their raw strength. By the time the final guard stepped forward, it was clear that Ethan had passed the test. The queen, standing at the back of the crowd, watched with a mix of astonishment and reluctant respect. Ethan had proven himself, just as he had promised. Lyra rushed to his side, her heart full of pride. You did it, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Ethan smiled, though he was clearly exhausted. This is just the beginning, Lyra, but it's a start. The queen nodded, her face still cold, but with a trace of something else, perhaps respect. You have passed the first trial, she said, but there are still more to come. Lyra took a deep breath, knowing that the trials were far from over. But she also knew that Ethan had just proven that humans were not as weak as the galaxy believed. He had shown them that humans were strong, resilient, and capable of greatness, and no matter what came next, she would stand by him, no matter what. The royal training grounds were now silent, the air thick with tension. Ethan stood at the center, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Sweat dripped from his forehead, his muscles sore from the combat, but he stood tall, unwavering. He had passed the first trial, but the queen's expression remained cold, her eyes calculating. The second trial would be far more difficult, and Ethan knew it. Lyra stood off to the side, her heart pounding in her chest. I had never seen Ethan fight like this before. The way he moved was unlike the royal guards who relied on strength. Alone, Ethan didn't just fight with power, he fought with strategy. He used his mind, his agility, and his knowledge of the battlefield to stay ahead. It was what had made him so different from the others. And now, she was watching him prove to everyone that a human could be just as strong, if not stronger, than the most skilled warriors. The queen's voice broke the silence. You've passed the first trial, human. But there are more tests to come. Are you ready for the second? Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded. I'm ready. The queen turned to one of her commanders. Prepare the second trial. We will see if the human can survive the gauntlet. A murmur passed through the crowd of onlookers. Gauntlet was the most brutal test of all. It was a maze of obstacles designed to challenge even the strongest of warriors. Those who attempted it had to face physical barriers, traps, and puzzles that tested not only strength but also their ability. To think quickly under pressure, Lyra's stomach tightened. She knew how hard the gauntlet was. Many had tried it and failed. Even some of the royal guards had been unable to complete it. The thought of Ethan going through it made her nervous, but she also believed in him. He had already shown that he was capable of far more than anyone had expected. Begin, Queen ordered. The command was given, and the first obstacle appeared before Ethan. It was a massive wall, towering over 10 feet high. The surface was smooth and without handholds, making it impossible to climb. Lyra could see the look in Ethan's eyes, a brief moment of hesitation. He hadn't expected this. But then, just as quickly, his eyes narrowed in focus. Ethan ran forward with surprising speed, his legs carrying him faster than anyone thought possible. He reached the base of the wall and, without missing a beat, jumped. His feet found purchase against the smooth surface, and with a powerful push, he propelled himself upward. It was a technique he had learned long ago, one that relied on quick reflexes and precise control. The crowd gasped as Ethan reached the top of the wall and flipped over it with ease. He landed softly on the other side, his movements fluid, as though he had done it 100 times before. Lyra watched with pride as Ethan moved to the next challenge. He was proving himself, not just to the queen, but to everyone watching. The alien species in the crowd had never seen a human move like this, and the whispers began to quiet. Ethan wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. The next trial came. Quickly, a series of swinging pendulums that threatened to knock him off balance. They were designed to test a warrior's agility and timing. Most would have been forced to stop and wait for the pendulums to swing back before moving forward. But Ethan didn't hesitate. He ducked under the first swing, then darted to the side, narrowly missing the next one. His speed was incredible, and his movements were calculated and precise. As he reached the end of the pendulums, he glanced back. At the crowd, his eyes met Lyra's, and he smiled. She smiled back, her heart swelling with pride. But there was no time to relax. The third trial was just ahead. The final part of the gauntlet was a puzzle. A massive door blocked the way forward, and it could only be opened by solving a complex set of symbols and mechanisms. It was a test of intelligence, and it required someone who could think logically and quickly. Ethan approached the door, his mind already working. The symbols on the door shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern every few seconds. Most would have been frustrated by the constant changes, but Ethan focused, his fingers running over the surface of the door. He paused at one symbol, then another, quickly deducing the correct sequence. It wasn't just about solving the puzzle, it was about remaining calm under pressure. And Ethan had always been good at that. As he placed the final symbol in place, the door clicked open, revealing the final stretch of the gauntlet. The crowd erupted into applause, amazed at how icely Ethan had completed the trial. Lyra couldn't believe it. He had done it. He had passed all of the trials, the toughest tests the royal family had to offer. And yet as he walked toward her, his face was calm, almost indifferent. It was as if the trials had been nothing more than another day in the life of a soldier. "You did it," Lyra whispered, her voice full of awe. Ethan grinned, but there was a hint of exhaustion in his eyes. "It's not over yet." The queen approached him, her expression unreadable. For a moment Lyra was afraid that the queen would demand more, that she would find another way to make Ethan prove himself. But then the queen spoke. "You have passed the trials," she said, her voice cold, but not without a trace of respect. "You have shown that a human can be strong, clever, and capable of surviving the most difficult tests. You are not what I expected, but perhaps that is a good thing." Lyra could hardly believe her ears. The queen had just admitted that Ethan had earned her respect. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "You may stay," the queen continued, "but do not forget there is still much to prove. You are not yet one of us." Lyra's heart soared. Ethan had done it. He had proven that humans were capable of greatness, that they were not to be underestimated. And though the queen's words were harsh, Lyra knew they were the beginning of something much bigger. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would begin to see humanity in a new light. Ethan took Lyra's hand and smiled. "I'll keep proving it, one step at a time." And with that, they walked side by side, ready to face whatever came next. This part focuses on Ethan completing the trials, showcasing his intelligence, strength, and determination. His success begins to change the perception of those around him, particularly the queen. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments. Ethan had passed the trials, each one more difficult than the last. The royal court had finally begun to recognize his strength, intelligence, and courage. The queen, once cold and dismissive, now regarded him with a measure of respect. But Lyra knew that this respect wasn't enough. The royal family was powerful, and power could be easily swayed by those who sought to undermine them. Lyra had hoped that after the trials the royal family would accept Ethan fully. But there was more to the story, something neither she nor Ethan knew about yet. Lyra walked beside Ethan through the palace corridors, her thoughts heavy. The morning after the trials, they had been summoned to the queen's private chambers. The queen had promised to officially recognize their marriage, but Lyra's instincts told her something was off. There was still a shadow lingering over them. As they approached the queen's chamber, the guards nodded at them, their expressions neutral. The doors opened slowly, revealing the queen seated on her throne. She motioned for them to approach. "Ethan," the queen began, her tone steady, "you've passed the trials. You've proven yourself in ways I did not expect. But there is one more thing that must be addressed." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, mother?" The queen's gaze shifted to Ethan, then back to Lyra. "I've been forced to reconsider what I once thought was impossible. You see, there is more to your husband than you realize. He's not just a soldier. He is part of something much bigger than you or I can imagine." Ethan's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Lyra's voice trembled. "What do you mean, mother? What is going on?" The queen's eyes narrowed, and for the first time she looked truly concerned. "You've been told that humanity is a weak, insignificant species. And in many ways, that is true. But there is one thing I failed to mention before. There is a secret one that has been kept hidden for generations." Lyra felt a chill run through her. She could tell by the queen's words that this was important. "What secret, mother?" The queen stood up slowly, her face unreadable. "The truth is, humans have been a part of a hidden military program for years. A program that has been kept from the galaxy. This program has been developing humans too. Be more than just soldiers, they have been turned into weapons." Ethan took a step forward, his face a mix of confusion and concern. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was just a soldier. I wasn't part of any secret program. Queen's expression hardened. "You may not know it, Ethan, but you are one of the few humans who was trained in a program designed to make you a weapon capable of taking on entire armies. The program was created by the Galactic Council as a last-ditch effort create a force that could stand against the rising threats in the galaxy. But it was kept secret. No one was meant to know. Lyra's heart raced as she turned to Ethan. Is this true? You've been a part of a secret military program. Ethan's mind was spinning. He remembered the intense training, the tests, the missions, but he had always thought it was just part of his job. He never imagined he was part of something much bigger. I don't remember anything like that. They never told me about any special program. I was just a soldier, doing my job. The Queen sighed deeply. You may not have known the truth, but you were part of a larger plan. The humans who survived the training were intended to be soldiers who could take on any alien force. They were enhanced, trained, and shaped into beings who could fight and survive in the harshest of conditions. Ethan's mind raced, the weight of the Queen's words sinking in. So you're saying, I was part of a program to turn humans into weapons? The Queen nodded. Yes, you were trained to be more than just a soldier. You were trained to be an instrument of war, capable of taking down even the strongest of armies. Lyra looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with worry. She didn't know what to think. The man she loved, the man who had stood by her side through thick and thin, was now part of something much bigger, something darker. She wanted to believe Ethan didn't know the full extent of the program, but the fact remained that he had been trained to be something more than human. Ethan looked at Lyra, his expression filled with guilt and confusion. I didn't ask for this, Lyra. I didn't know. I thought I was just a soldier. But now, I don't know what to believe. Lyra reached out and took his hand. I believe you, Ethan. You're not a weapon. You're the man I love. The man who saved me. The man who proved his worth in those trials. It's all that matters to me. The Queen stood silently, watching the exchange. For a moment, she said nothing. But then her voice cut through the tension. I've told you this, not to scare you, but to warn you. There are those who would use your abilities, Ethan. There are people who want to see this program succeed, and they will stop at nothing to ensure it does. You may have survived the trials, but the real battle has only just begun. Lyra looked at her mother, her face hardening. What do you mean, Mother? Who are these people? The Queen hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, her voice softer. Now, there are factions within the Galactic Council who are aware of the program. They will stop at nothing to use it to their advantage. And now that they know there are humans who have been trained to be more than soldiers, they will come after you. Ethan's fists clenched. So now I'm a target because of something I didn't even know about? The Queen's gaze softened. Slightly. I know this is difficult to understand, but you must be ready. They will come for you, and they will stop at nothing to take you back. You've proven your worth, but now you have a new enemy to face, one that you did not choose. Lyra turned to Ethan, her heart heavy with the weight of her mother's words. This was no longer just a fight for acceptance. They had to fight for their lives, for their future together. Ethan nodded slowly, his voice steady. Then we'll fight. Together. Lyra smiled, squeezing his hand. Together. And with that, they both knew that the road ahead would be filled with even greater challenges. But no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. The days following the Queen's revelation were filled with tension. Ethan and Lyra knew that the peaceful life they had hoped for was now out of reach. They were no longer just fighting for acceptance in the royal court. Now, they were fighting for their lives. Queen had warned them that the Galactic Council would come after Ethan. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of something far more dangerous. And someone, somewhere, would stop at nothing to use him as a weapon. Lyra could see the worry in Ethan's eyes, but she also saw determination. Despite everything, he hadn't backed down. He had proven his strength in the trials, and now he would prove his worth again this time, not just to the royal family, but to the enemies who were hunting him. Lyra would be right by his side, no matter what. The Queen had given them little time to prepare. The royal court was still buzzing with the news of Ethan's trials and his mysterious background. Many had already started to whisper about the danger that Ethan posed. Some saw him as a hero, a symbol of humanity's strength. Others, like Lyra's cousin Varric, saw him as a threat to their power. It was clear that the royal family's support was divided. But just when they thought they had a moment to breathe, the palace doors were thrown open, and a group of royal guards marched in. Their faces were grim, and the air was thick with tension. "The Queen demands your presence," one of the guards said, his voice cold. Lyra looked at Ethan, her heart pounding. She had a feeling that the Queen was about to make an important decision. They followed the guards in silence, making their way to the royal chamber. The doors closed behind them with a heavy thud, and the Queen was already standing in front of the throne, her face hard as stone. "Ethan," the Queen said, her voice calm but filled with authority, "I did not bring you here to congratulate you. I brought you here because I need your help." Ethan didn't flinch. "What do you need?" The Queen looked at Lyra, then back at Ethan. "There are factions in the Galactic Council who want to use your abilities for their own gain. They believe you are the key to a new weapon, a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, and they will not rest until they have control of you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying, Mother?" "I'm saying that we are at war," the Queen replied. "The Galactic Council is divided, and there are those who want to use you, Ethan, to shift the balance of power in their favor. They've already tried to get to you, and it's only a matter of time before they make another attempt." Jaw tightened. "So you want me to fight back?" The Queen nodded. "Yes. I need you to help us defend our kingdom from the forces that want to tear it apart. You are not just a soldier anymore. You are a symbol of strength, of resilience, of what humanity can achieve. And we need that." Lyra watched Ethan carefully, waiting for his response. She knew that this was the moment of truth. He'd fight for them, for her, and for the kingdom that had once rejected him. Or would he walk away unable to carry the weight of such a responsibility? Ethan's voice was firm. "I'll fight. It's not just for your kingdom, but for what we've built together for you." Lyra's heart swelled with pride, but there was still fear in her eyes. She knew the dangers they would face. The forces within the Galactic Council were powerful, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Ethan wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for the future of their entire world. The Queen nodded approvingly, but her eyes were filled with concern. "We will give you the resources you need, but the battle will be fierce. You will be facing warriors from across the galaxy, some stronger than anything you've encountered before. There will be no turning back." "I understand," Ethan said, "but I won't back down. I've already proven what I can do. I won't let anyone take away what we've worked for." Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "We're in this together, Ethan. You're not alone." The Queen's gaze softened for a moment. "I hope you understand the gravity of what you are about to face. The war will not be easy. You will need to be prepared, both mentally and physically." Ethan's eyes never wavered. "We'll be ready. We've faced worse." The Queen studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Very well. I'll give the order to begin preparations. But no, this your battle is not just against the Galactic Council. It's against anyone who stands in our way." Lyra felt a chill run through her, but she refused to show fear. They had come this far together, and they would face whatever came next together. They didn't have a choice. As they left the Queen's chamber, the weight of the Queen's words settled heavily on their shoulders. The palace was no longer a safe haven. They were now at the center of a dangerous political storm. Their lives were about to change forever. Lyra couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and excitement. She knew that they were walking into a battle they couldn't fully understand. She also knew that Ethan had already proven himself to be a warrior unlike any other. Together, they would fight not just for their love, but for the future of the galaxy. As they made their way down the corridors, Lyra's hand tightly clasped in Ethan's. She knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with danger, but they would face it side by side. And no matter how difficult the journey, they would never give up. "I'll fight for you." "Lyra," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with conviction. "I'll fight for all of us." And for the first time in a long while, Lyra believed him. Together, they would take on the universe. This part focuses on Ethan being asked to help defend the kingdom, setting up the larger conflict with the Galactic Council. Ethan's willingness to fight alongside Lyra strengthens their bond, and they prepare for the battles ahead. Let me know if you'd like to make any change. The tension in the air had never been thicker. The moment had come. Ethan and Lyra had agreed to fight for the future of their world, to stand against the forces of the Galactic Council that threatened their lives. The weight of the decision hung over them both, but there was no turning back. They were in this together, and together. They would face whatever came next. The royal palace had become a military stronghold. The halls now filled with soldiers and strategists. The queen, once cold and distant, had fully supported Ethan's decision. Despite her initial resistance, she had come to understand that the galaxy would not wait for them to be ready. They had to act now, or face losing everything. And so, with Ethan and Lyra at her side, she began preparing for war. It wasn't just about defending their kingdom anymore. This was about defending humanity's place in the galaxy. Ethan had shown the royal court that humans were not weak or insignificant. It was time to show the rest of the galaxy that humanity could stand on its own. Ethan had taken on a leadership role, training the royal soldiers and human forces alike. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the symbol of what they were fighting for. His knowledge of combat tactics and his experience as a soldier had made him an invaluable asset to the royal army. But it wasn't just his strength that made him stand out. It was his mind, his ability to think ahead, to see things that others missed. He had already proven that he could outsmart his enemies in the trials, and now he would use that same brilliance to outwit the Council's forces. Lyra watched Ethan with a mixture of pride and worry. She knew he was ready, but she also knew that this fight was unlike anything they had faced before. The stakes were higher than ever. She could see the burden on his shoulders, the weight of the decisions he had to make. But no matter what, she would stand by him, just as he had stood by her. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice steady. But filled with concern, Ethan looked up from the battle plans he had been studying. He met her eyes and smiled, but there was something different in his expression. Something that spoke of determination, of a man ready to fight for everything he loved. "I have to be," he said softly. "We both do." The days blurred into one another as the preparations continued. Soldiers trained, ships were repaired, and the royal army gathered strength. The galaxy was about to witness a power shift that would change everything. Then, one day the message came. The Galactic Council had made its move. The forces that had been watching from the shadows were now ready to strike. A fleet of enemy ships was headed toward the royal planet. The time for talk was over. The battle was about to begin. Ethan and Lyra stood on the balcony of the palace, watching as the fleet appeared in the sky. The ships were massive, dark shadows against the bright stars, each one a reminder of the enemies they now faced. Lyra's heart raced as she looked at the approaching fleet, but she didn't feel fear. Not anymore. She felt something else, something stronger. Confidence. "We've trained for this," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We can do this." Nodded, squeezing his hand. "We're not alone. We have the people of the kingdom, and we have each other. It's all we need." The royal army mobilized quickly, their ships ready to face the enemy head-on. Ethan had helped design a strategy that would give them an advantage. They would use the element of surprise, attacking from multiple directions to confuse the enemy and gain the upper hand. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about strategy, about outsmarting the Council's forces. The battle began as the first shots were fired. The air was filled with the sound of blaster fire, the hum of laser beams cutting through the sky. Ethan was on the front lines, his mind focused on the tactics he had planned. He barked orders to his soldiers, guiding them through the chaos. They were a team, now human and alien soldiers working together, fighting for the same cause. Lyra fought alongside him, not as a princess, but as a warrior. She had trained just as hard as the rest of them, learning how to defend herself, how to fight for what she believed in. She wasn't just a figurehead anymore. She was a leader, standing shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers of her kingdom. The battle raged on for hours, with neither side willing to give up. But slowly, the tide began to turn. Ethan's strategy was working. The enemy fleet was scattered, their ships disoriented and vulnerable. The Royal Army pushed forward, gaining ground with every move. Ethan's voice came through the comms, calm and commanding. "This is it. We take the lead ship. That's the key to ending this." Lyra nodded, her grip tightening around her weapon. "Let's do it." They led a final charge toward the flagship of the enemy fleet. The battle was fierce, but they fought with everything they had. Ethan and Lyra's teamwork was unmatched, their bond stronger than ever. The enemy ships fell one by one until only the flagship remained. The final showdown was a blur of action. Ethan and Lyra stormed the flagship, cutting through the enemy forces with precision. The leader of the enemy fleet, a ruthless general from a distant planet, stood in their path. He was tall, armored, and fierce, but he was no match for Ethan's speed and strategy. With a swift move, Ethan disarmed him, taking control of the flagship. The battle was over. The royal fleet had won. The Galactic Council's forces had been defeated. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. The royal family, once seen as weak and fragile, had shown the universe what they were capable of, and humanity, once overlooked, had proven that they were not to be underestimated. Ethan and Lyra stood together, looking out over the battlefield. The sky was clear once again, the stars shining bright above them. They had done it. They had fought for their future and won. "This is just the beginning," Lyra said, her voice filled with hope. Ethan nodded, his arm around her. "Yes, but we're ready. Together we can face anything." And with that, they knew that their love, their strength, and their determination would carry them through whatever challenges the future held. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do, and it was only the beginning of a new era. This part showcases the final battle, where Ethan and Lyra lead the royal forces against the Galactic Council's fleet. Their teamwork and strategy are key to the victory, marking a turning point in their fight for the future. Let me know if you'd like any changes.